Okay, so get this. We're diving into the Bible, but we're not talking, parting seas or burning bushes today.
Right.
We're talking ancient HR,
Yeah.
like straight up organizational charts.
Fascinating stuff.
The stuff that, made King David's kingdom actually work.
It really is.
Yeah.
We often kind of gloss over these seemingly mundane details
Right.
in First Chronicles, but they offer incredible insights into how complex leadership was in ancient Israel.
Totally. It's like you think King David and you think harp-playing giant slaying.
Right.
But these chapters, 25 through 27, they reveal like a strategic mind that was obsessed with organization. Like we're talking meticulous records, chains of command.
Absolutely.
Like think of it as the ancient world's version of a well-oiled machine.
And like any good, well-oiled machine, it all starts with a good structure.
Okay.
And in this case, it literally starts with the music.
Really?
First Chronicles 25, it kind of plunges right into this fascinating world of temple musicians.
You mean like more than just some folks with lyres just hanging out in the back?
Oh, yeah, far more.
Yep.
We're talking about a very meticulously organized system of over 288 musicians.
288 musicians.
Yeah. These weren't just some random singers and instrumentalists either.
Okay.
They were led by three key figures: Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun.
Okay.
And yet those names aren't just like pulled out of thin air.
Right.
They appear elsewhere in the Bible too.
Interesting.
Suggesting that these were very prominent figures in their own right.
Wow. 288 musicians. That's like bigger than some symphony orchestras today.
It's pretty impressive.
I can't even imagine the rehearsal schedule.
And the organization doesn't stop there.
Really?
The text actually describes how they use a system of lots.
What?
Kind of like drawing straws.
No way.
To ensure fairness when they were divvying up duties.
Wait, they drew straws to decide who played what?
That's what it sounds like.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool, right?
Talk about attention to detail. But it wasn't just about keeping the music sounding good, right?
Right.
This is the temple we're talking about, the heart of their religious and political life.
Exactly. Everything had to be in its right place.
Right.
Which leads us to another really crucial but often overlooked group that's detailed in 1 Chronicles 26. The gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Doors are important.
Sure.
But were they really that big of a deal?
Well, think about it. The temple housed sacred objects.
Okay.
It served as a central gathering point.
Okay.
Security and ritual purity were paramount.
Right.
These weren't just guys holding doors open.
Oh.
These were guardians.
Okay.
Their strength and their valor are specifically highlighted in the text.
Interesting.
We even see some familiar names pop up, like the sons of Obed-Edom,
right.
a figure known for his piety.
So even guarding the doors had layers of significance.
Absolutely.
Every detail mattered.
It did, but you can't run a kingdom, even a religiously focused one, on good music and secure doors alone.
Right. That's true. What about the finances?
You're getting to the heart of any good bureaucracy.
Right.
1 Chronicles 26 also reveals the inner workings of the temple treasury.
Because even back then, someone had to keep track of the donations, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like tossing coins in a jar.
Right.
We're talking about a carefully managed system for handling dedicated gifts and even spoils of war.
Wow.
This was a position of immense responsibility.
Yeah.
Entrusted to a man named Shelomoth and his sons.
Shelomoth. Interesting name. I wonder if there's any relation to Solomon,
Good question.
the wise king.
It's possible.
Yeah.
What's really fascinating here is that the text emphasizes the trustworthiness of those appointed to manage the treasury.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the numbers.
Right.
It was about character
Yeah.
and integrity.
It's like you're saying this wasn't a modern banking system.
Exactly.
Checks and balances. This was all about personal accountability. So it sounds like King David understood that even a warrior king needs a good accountant. But it wasn't just the temple he was focused on, right?
Right.
These chapters seem to suggest a much broader bureaucratic structure.
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
Chapters 26 and 27. They expand our view beyond the temple.
Okay.
Showing how this meticulous attention to detail permeated every facet of David's reign.
Wow.
We encounter this vast network of officials.
Really?
Responsible for everything from justice and territorial administration to, believe it or not, agricultural work.
Wait, agricultural work?
Yep.
Like royal gardeners.
That's what it sounds like.
And shepherds. Now, that's an image I don't think I've ever pictured while reading the Bible.
It's not the first thing that comes to mind.
Not at all.
But that's what makes these chapters so intriguing.
Yeah.
They kind of shatter our preconceived notions of what ancient leadership was.
Totally.
This wasn't just about, conquest and pronouncements from on high.
Right. It was about managing resources, ensuring stability,
Okay.
seeing to the practical needs of the kingdom.
It's like David understood that true leadership meant like sweating the small stuff as much as the big battles.
Yeah. And speaking of battles,
Yep.
chapter 27 gives us a glimpse into the organization of David's army.
Okay.
And it's not just like a random collection of soldiers.
Right.
We see a highly structured system
Okay.
with commanders rotating monthly,
Interesting.
each leading a division of, get this, 24,000 men.
24,000.
It's a lot, guys.
That's a lot of guys. Why the monthly rotation, though?
That's a good question.
Was David worried about someone staging a coup?
It's possible. I mean, history is full of examples of powerful generals amassing too much influence.
Sure.
This rotation likely served as a clever way to prevent any one commander
Right.
from gaining too much power.
Okay, so smart move.
Right. But it wasn't just about politics.
Okay.
There were very practical advantages as well.
Like what? Spill the historical tea? Well, for starters, it meant that fresh troops were constantly being cycled,
Okay.
preventing exhaustion
Makes sense.
and ensuring a constant state of readiness.
Right.
It also meant that soldiers from different regions and backgrounds would have the opportunity to train and fight together,
Okay.
fostering unity and preventing the formation of regional power bases.
So it was strategic on like multiple levels.
Exactly.
Smart move, King David. But this is all still pretty high level, right?
Okay.
Big picture stuff.
Mm.
Did these chapters ever zoom in on the like day-to-day human side?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Of all this bureaucracy.
Okay.
In fact, chapter 27 throws us a curveball
What's that?
that reveals that even in this highly organized system,
Yeah.
things didn't always go according to plan.
Oh, no.
And even kings weren't immune to making mistakes.
Everybody makes mistakes.
That's right. So Joab, David's top general.
Yeah.
The text mentions him starting a census
Okay.
of all the fighting men in Israel.
Right.
Seems straightforward enough.
Yeah, like a head count to get a sense of their, military strength.
Right.
Not exactly burning bush material.
Exactly. Except Joab never finishes the job.
Okay.
And for some reason, that really gets under God's skin.
Wait, hold up. God gets angry about an incomplete census.
Yeah.
What's the big deal about counting people?
Well, it's a question that has fascinated scholars for centuries.
Right.
Some see it as an act of pride,
Okay.
as if David is trying to take credit for the size of his army
Oh, interesting.
instead of acknowledging it as God's blessing.
So a little, look how mighty I am, instead of, look what we can do with God's help.
Precisely.
Okay.
Others interpret it as a lack of trust in God's provision,
Right.
as if counting soldiers somehow implied that David was relying on his own strength
Okay.
instead of divine protection.
Interesting. So it's not the act itself, but the motivation behind it? Like
Yeah.
maybe David was letting all this meticulous organization go to his head a little?
Perhaps. Whatever the reason, this seemingly minor detail about an incomplete census
Right.
has major theological implications.
Wow.
It reminds us that even in the midst of all this meticulously planning and organizing,
Right.
human actions have consequences,
Right.
and true power ultimately rests with a higher authority.
A sobering thought, for sure. But it also makes you wonder if God was ticked about a census. What about all the other stuff we've been talking about, all those officials and structures and systems? Was that all just human effort, or was there like a divine blueprint guiding it all?
Now, that's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the incredible depth and complexity of these chapters.
Right.
We can analyze them on a historical level, a leadership level,
Right.
and even a spiritual level.
Totally.
There's always more to uncover more, to learn more, to connect with our own lives.
It's a good reminder that the Bible isn't just a collection of stories.
Right.
It's a living document that speaks to us across millennia.
It really is.
But back to David and his organizational skills.
Okay.
We've talked about the army, the treasury, even the gatekeepers.
Great.
Did these chapters ever get into the really nitty-gritty details?
Like what?
Like who was in charge of making sure the royal sheep were properly sheared?
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Chapter 27 actually lists the officials
Yeah.
in charge of, among other things, David's flocks and herds.
No way! Seriously?
Huh.
They had a minister of sheep.
Not quite minister of sheep, but close.
Okay.
It highlights a very crucial point, though.
What's that?
This wasn't just an army with a soundtrack.
Okay.
This was an agrarian society.
All right.
Managing resources, especially livestock,
Yeah.
was vital to their survival.
So even King David Giant Slayer
Yeah.
had to think about things like wool production and milk yields.
Precisely.
Wow.
It adds another layer to his leadership,
Right.
demonstrating a keen understanding of the practicalities of governing a kingdom.
Right.
Remember, a well-fed populace is less likely to revolt.
Practical and strategic. Those seem to be recurring themes in David's leadership style.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing even the most organized leader can't do it all alone, right?
That's true.
Did these chapters mention anyone else?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
In David's inner circle. Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, chapter 27 reads like a who's who
Right.
of ancient Israelite power players.
Okay.
We encounter names like Jonathan,
Yeah.
David's uncle, known for his wisdom,
Right.
and Jehiel,
Okay.
entrusted with a very important task.
Oh, don't leave me hanging. What did Jehiel do?
He was in charge of educating David's sons.
Wow.
The text literally says he was over the king's sons.
Oh, okay.
Talk about a high-stakes teaching gig.
Right.
This wasn't just about algebra and grammar.
Yeah.
This was about shaping the future leaders of Israel.
Wow. Talk about pressure. Imagine being responsible for the education of the princes.
I know, right?
No parent-teacher nights for that.
Uh.
Any other notable figures in David's inner circle?
We can't forget Ahithophel,
Okay.
David's chief counselor.
Yeah.
Okay, a man whose wisdom was so renowned, it was said to be like seeking counsel directly from God.
Okay, this Ahithophel guy sounds like a big deal. Was he the one who suggested the census too?
Funny you should ask.
Yeah.
While that whole census debacle falls on Joab,
Right.
Ahithophel's story takes kind of a dark turn later in David's reign.
Really?
He actually ends up betraying the king and joining forces with Absalom,
No.
David's son, during a rebellion.
Whoa, talk about a plot twist.
Right.
I guess even the wisest advisors can have their own agendas.
It's true.
It makes you wonder if David had anyone in his corner
Yeah.
who didn't eventually betray him.
Well, there's Hushai the Archite,
Okay.
often described as David's friend.
Okay.
He remained loyal during Absalom's rebellion
Okay.
and played a really crucial role in thwarting their plans.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that David had at least one ride-or-die friend
Right.
amidst all the political drama.
Yes. It's a good reminder that even the most powerful rulers rely on a close circle of trusted advisors and confidants.
Totally.
Leadership, even in ancient times, was rarely a solitary endeavor.
Very true. And these personal relationships, these bonds of loyalty and betrayal, they add another layer of intrigue to these chapters.
Right.
We're not just talking about organizational charts and lines of authority anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
We're talking about human beings with all their complexities and flaws,
Absolutely.
trying to navigate the challenges of power, ambition, and faith.
Very well said.
It's wild, right? Like, we started with what seemed like, super dry lists
I know.
of names and duties, and now all of a sudden we're like knee deep in loyalty,
Right.
betrayal, like the actual human drama
It's true.
at the heart of even the most like buttoned up system.
Yeah, that's what makes these chapters that are often kind of relegated to the like boring parts of the Bible
Right.
so interesting. They challenge our assumptions about what these texts are.
Totally.
They show us that history, even ancient history, is made up of the same messy human ingredients as our own lives.
Right. And speaking of messy and human,
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about, David's organizational genius,
Mm-hmm.
but this whole census thing,
Yeah.
that's a pretty big mess up.
It's a head scratcher.
It makes you wonder, like, what's the takeaway here?
Yeah.
If even King David, divinely appointed,
You're right.
can make such a big mistake, what does that say about, like, leadership in general?
Right.
About human nature itself?
It's a question that I think still resonates with us today.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a reminder that no matter how carefully you plan,
Mm-hmm.
how perfectly you organize things,
Right.
there are always going to be forces outside of our control.
Totally.
Or maybe it's a cautionary tale about pride,
Right.
about the importance of staying humble,
Right.
especially when we're at the top of our game.
It's like you're saying no matter how many spreadsheets you make, no matter how well you organize your world, there's always that element of the unknown, wild card. Having faith doesn't mean that you shouldn't plan,
Right.
but it also doesn't mean that everything is going to go perfectly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And isn't that kind of a refreshing bit of wisdom,
Totally.
especially these days?
Yeah.
We like to think we're in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
But sometimes the best laid plans,
Yeah,
they go off the rails.
they go astray, they backfire,
Right?
they lead to divine censuses gone wrong.
Exactly.
But hey, maybe that's part of the point, right?
Right.
These ancient texts, they weren't meant to be like instruction manuals
Excellent.
for living a perfect life. They're more like mirrors.
Yes.
They show us ourselves,
Yes.
our own struggles and triumphs, our very human attempts to figure out this complex world,
Beautifully said.
right?
And in that sense, these chapters from First Chronicles, I think, are surprisingly relevant for us today.
Totally.
They remind us that it's not always the big stories that matter most.
Right.
Sometimes it's the small details, the easily overlooked parts of life that teach us the deepest truths about ourselves and the world around us.
I love that. So as we kind of like emerge from this deep dive,
Yeah.
less, burning bush, more like organized bureaucracy, what's the one thing you really hope listeners take away from this?
I'd say the most important thing is to always approach these texts, even the ones you think you know,
Right.
with a sense of curiosity and wonder.
I love that.
Because there's always something new to discover, some connection waiting to be made
Right.
if we're willing to go a little deeper.
To dig a little deeper, ask the unexpected questions. Maybe even see a little bit of ourselves in these stories of ancient kings and musicians.
It's amazing how these ancient texts
I know.
can still speak to us today.
It really is. And who knows? Maybe the next time you're feeling overwhelmed by all the little things on your to-do list,
Right.
you'll find a little inspiration in the organizational genius of King David.
Right. Maybe just skip the whole census thing.
Yeah, maybe skip that part. Thanks for joining me on this fascinating deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.